They say the decisions have already been made in closed rooms. They want you to stay quiet. They want you to stay tired.
But here's the hard fact. The Electoral Act 2025 is already signed. The Nigeria Tax Act 2025 is already in your pocket. The laws that will govern your future are being tested today. This isn't just another radio show. It's a board meeting for the Republic. If you pay tax, you are a shareholder. If you have a vote, you hold the power of attorney. We aren't just discussing policy, we are auditing the performance.
From the three-arm zone to the streets of the FCT, from the federal budget to your local ward, we are tracking every kobo. We are deconstructing every clause.
Don't be a spectator in your own democracy. Don't let them spend your mandate without your permission. It's time to move from the sidelines to the front lines.
Provocative, intellectual, action-oriented. The Citizen's Mandate with Somi, reclaiming the office of the citizen, one audit at a time.
The mandate is yours. Now, let's get to work.
Every Thursday from 5 p.m. only on 95.1 Nigeria Info. Abuja, let's talk.
Welcome back to Hard Facts.
Welcome back, Abuja. It is time for us to get into our conversation for the 5 o'clock hour, which every Thursdays we now know as the Citizens Mandate. And if you are new to the show, it's okay. We're new to it as well. This is only the second edition of this show. And we started off by trying to make us sort of reorientate our minds. We want to start, before we start talking about the mandate and all of that, get an understanding of who really and truly a citizen is. Our job is to paint the picture for you, okay? And then you then take that picture and to see if you can act on it or not. And to help me paint that picture, we've got back in the studio with us. He was here with us on the maiden edition of the show. He's here for the second time. Coach Isaiah Emmanuel. He's an author and he wears many, many hats. He'd rather that I keep it at coach and author for this evening. So good to have you here, sir. Welcome back to the Citizens Mandate.
Thank you so much, Somi, for having me back, and thank you, Abuja.
Yes. So we started off last week trying to get an understanding with where we've gotten it wrong, you know, in terms of the words that we use.
Yes.
We talked about the name that we call ourselves and how that helps to shape our identity.
Correct.
And so some people will not probably get on board with this conversation about a citizen's mandate if they don't even understand or consider themselves to be citizens in the first place. Yeah. And we took time last week to get into how we got it wrong. But we want to believe that we're at the place where we can then say, if you do believe that you're a citizen, you know, what happened to us sometimes requires a lot of therapy. And therapy sometimes is not a one-time thing. So we'll continue to have those conversations to shape the mind, but at the same time, if we can just get a picture of how to then transit in that mindset, practically speaking, moving from the term masses to citizens. Yeah. Yes, so let's pick it up from there again, sir.
All right, thank you so very much. I so want to thank God for the opportunity again to be on the studio again. You know, last week we began conversations around understanding our rights. Mm-hmm. We also talked about what makes us citizens, and we began to talk around talking point around who is a Nigerian and what gives us our identity, and we were able to establish some very fundamental points last week when we said that we have rights as citizens.
Yes.
That the Constitution, which is the binding document, in our world we call it the root document. The root document that gives us true identity, the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999, as amended, define who a citizen is as someone who is born in Nigeria by birth or by naturalization or by registration. We're able to establish that by birth give us status by reason of the section 20, chapter 2 of the Constitution, talking about citizenship. It gives us the sense of identity, who we are as Nigerians. We're able to establish all of that, and our conversation went for that to say, okay, if the Constitution actually gives us an identity, then we don't have to take on another label, that subtly, influence our mindset and our thinking, that shapes the way we see things. And, you talked about the issue of the masses versus citizens last week. And I went back home and I was just thinking all through the whole thing. And I realized that, how we call ourselves shapes our reality. How we call ourselves shapes our reality. And, we were having conversations with some persons, after I left the studio, and some persons were asking me, and you're talking about how can we deal with this issue? I said, hold on there. That's where the problem is. He's wanting to give some people identity. Is another thing to accept it and internalize it to the point that it begin to shape our daily narratives. And I remember saying last week that there are certain words that were not used by the Constitution that we, unconsciously allow that to shape our national life, allow that to shape the decisions we make even around our national life together. But if we begin to have conversations that begin to reshape our mindset, reset our mindset, and help us to begin to mentally shift first, then we can begin to shift emotionally, then we can begin to shift physically. I know when we begin to have conversations that centers around us seeing ourselves not as observers of Nigerian politics, observers of Nigerian national life, but active participants, of the national life. It is that time when we begin to take ownership. So we talk about owning this country. This country belongs to us. When we said the last time that the citizenship identity that the Constitution gives us sense of equality. The Akara woman seller, the guy selling corn on the street, the Okada rider, and the senator, in the eye of the law, we are equal. We are equal. The identity that the Constitution gives us that sense of equality, And we must begin to see that we all have a stake, in this country. Yes.
Okay. Speaking about this idea of no matter who you are, no matter what cadre or class in society, you're equal.
Yeah.
There are certain things that happen in the life of many Nigerians in their day-to-day that constantly reinforces, that thing of there's a difference. I'm up there and you're down here. We're not the same. I take, for example, something that happened, I think it was over the weekend. It's been in the news, a lot of places where someone in a uniform in broad daylight, knowing that he was being recorded on camera, considered the life of somebody who was in handcuffs, tied to the floor, helpless, unable to move, unable to defend himself, and a police officer just in broad daylight killed him. There is that, it does something to the mind of the Nigerian to say, you are reinforcing that these rights that you say that I have, I don't have it. How do we combat that?
Yeah, this is where these kind of conversations come in. We are a nation with law. We are a country with several laws. Remember last week we were talking about one of the fundamental rights of every Nigerian, which is the right to human person, the right to dignity of the human person. Now, if we don't enforce it, we don't voice it, we don't talk about it, one of the things that this narrative over the years have created on the street and among us Nigerians is that it has created this chasm, this gap, this class, this power versus we and them kind of class, gap, where The moment someone begins to earn 10,000 and has the police uniform, you feel that I am no longer part of them. But we go to the same market. We go to the same worship centers and all of that. So we must begin to have conversations at the local level. We must begin to take this narrative everywhere and start like a campaign. My voice matter. Very powerful. That every Nigerian's voice matter. As long as he has the identity conferred on him by the Constitution, his voice matter. His life matter. His life matter. Because the document that binds all of us together and give us sense of identity, sense of ownership of this country, did not segregate between those who have a gun in their hands and those who do not. And the law is clear. Nobody is above the law. So I think for scenarios like that, it is this kind of awareness, this kind of campaign will begin to take around, this kind of conversation will begin to have everywhere, and everyone begin to come to a sense of awareness and sense of ownership that this country belongs to all of us, and we own it together. It is when we begin to have conversations like this that we'll begin to address some of this impunity. And when we see things like that's not right, we must voice out.
I was going to come there because, again, remember, I started the conversation by saying we're trying to paint a picture of what it is to mentally, physically, culturally, in all ways, resign from the masses mentality and move to a position of citizenship, ownership, responsibility. I go back to that scenario with the police officer and the unfortunate young man who's now passed. If you had active citizens in that scenario, what would have happened differently?
They'll hold him to accountable. It's not even too late. That police...
No. At that point, before he took the shot, because his intent was clear, the manner in which that young man was apprehended was clear. Do you think being an active citizen will have changed anything in that scenario?
Before we got to the point where he was arrested, you see, naturally, once we all own the sense of identity that this country belongs to us, we'll be able to address police. Police are part of the society. They are human beings like us. There is a mindset already that is fueling that act of brutality. Now, if we have citizens within that community, when the incident happened, before it degenerates into getting the guy to lie down, voices will speak. People around will step in. I don't know what I'm saying. People around will step in because we have a sense of understanding of what my right, the moment of arrest, I have rights until I'm proven guilty. Do you understand? The law enforcement officer also know that this man understands his rights. So once we begin to ensure that people begin to take responsibility for their actions, you see, some of these things are fueled by a sense of whatever will happen. I spend money, you spend money, and that's all. Because there are narratives perhaps surrounding that story that we may not know the root cause of that crisis. The policeman, we don't know whether he is being influenced, whether his mental state. You see, there are processes that should qualify an individual, you understand what I'm saying, to join the force. Is he mentally okay in the first place? Was he under an influence? He has superiors who gave him, he signed in that gun in the morning. Were there checks on his mental state in the morning before he was handed over the gun to go to the street?
Just to be clear, we're talking about active citizenry.
Yeah. So when
this picture that we are painting, is it more idealistic than realistic?
No, you see, it's idealistic. We can move from that ideal state to begin to naturally change the narrative to become realistic in our lives. This is a dysfunction that has happened too long a time. And I think what this show is trying to do is to see how we can begin to shift the mental perspective of the Nigerians to begin to say, no, change can begin with us. Change can begin with me. I can start here and begin to influence my friends, my colleagues, my family members, and begin to give them this sense of awareness. It starts with someone. You understand? So because the impunity has continued for too long. And until we begin to move to that mental realm, the ideal state we are expecting to see, which is what the Constitution has given to us, if we don't continuously create an awareness for Nigerians to say, this is what the ideal says. This is our current reality. How we move from here to the ideal? It is beginning this kind of narrative and conversation that this is what the Constitution said. This is who I am. This is who we are corporately. How can we begin to take on this sense of identity? You know, you asked a question the other time, and I said for want of time, I didn't want to go into that. I think this is very important. I was talking about the corporate or shared value that we all hold as Nigerians. How many of us really know that? How many Nigerians?
That's the one you said that there are 9 of them.
There are 7 of them,
okay,
actually.
7.
There are 7 of them.
Yes.
If you look at Section 23 of the Nigerian 1999 Constitution as amended, national ethics, it says, let me quote, the national ethics shall be discipline, which means adherence to rules and regulation. Number 2, that's Section 23 of the 1999 Constitution, shall be discipline, shall be integrity, shall be dignity of labor, shall be social justice, shall be religious tolerance, shall be self-reliance and patriotism. These are the 7 shared values that are enshrined in the Constitution that every Nigerian must hold. These shared values expected to define our behaviors. They expect to define how we relate. I expect to influence how we make the laws, the spirit behind making the laws, and the implementations of this law. These are the values that we say we are holding together corporately as Nigerians.
Don't you think it's interesting that a lot of
This kind of conversations come from? Because if a person knows that one value we hold is integrity, do you know what I'm saying? He is going to be evaluated by that. Political office holders know that the value we all agree that is governing our behavior is integrity, enshrined in the Constitution. I'm not saying from anywhere. If you look at even the national ethics and integrity policy of the ICPC, it strengthens the same thing. The laws are there. But how much of us, how many of it do we know? How many of it are we practicing? We're talking about citizen mandate right now. Citizens need to know. Elections is coming very closely. I think for me, this is where this kind of conversation should go. If we say we have 7 core values, these are the principles. You see, basically, what's national ethics? National ethics fundamentally is the core values, the moral principles, and the code of conduct that guide the behavior of every citizen in Nigeria. And the Constitution defines those moral principles that govern institutional relationship with its citizens, that govern citizen relationship with one another. The Constitution defines all of that. But do we know it? Are we holding ourselves accountable to it? Are we practicing it?
Okay, we'll come back and speak a little more on that. I honestly feel that the barriers that are making that impossible, I don't know if we can break through the barriers before we're able to have this mental shift, or we have to have the mental shift before we're able to break through the barrier. So perhaps you start with that one when we come back from this break.
one talk, news, and sports station. This is Nigeria Info.
Welcome back, Capital City. It's the Citizens' Mandate on your number one talk. And shift into the position of citizens, basically recognizing us as stakeholders, as owners, as people who are responsible. And I asked Coach Emmanuel just before we went on the commercial break to say, it's all well and good that we're saying these things, we're defining the name, showing what the Constitution says and all of that. And perhaps it will not be right to say that a lot of Nigerians don't know some of these things. Yeah. It might not be right to say that even the core values, some people don't know. Because I think last week when you mentioned it, someone actually wrote them in and sent them in. So, but there are still barriers, whether mental, whether physical, and what have you, outside of even just identifying by that term or that label, that doesn't make it easy for citizens to step into their role and step into their shoes. And the question I'd ask you is, which one will come first? Is it that the mindset shift will now lead to the breaking of the barrier, or the barrier needs to be broken first, or the barriers need to be brought down first before we're not able to get into that space mentally?
I think for me, the conversation should be both can go together, because once you shift mentally, you'll consciously begin to break the barriers. Once there's a mental shift, the mindset regulates actions. I was sharing some the other day, and we're talking about how those behavior shifts. I remember saying that, for you to change a behavior, alter a behavior, the first thing you begin to alter is the quality of information an individual receives. Now, the quality of information the individual receives influence what he believes.
Okay.
So information determines belief. And belief now unconsciously begin to shape value. It's when belief begin to alter values that you begin to see alteration in the action of the individual.
Right.
And ultimately you see a change in behavior. So I think it begins with giving out quality information for the individual to first come to the sense of awareness that this is who I am, this is my sense of identity, this is who I am. He believes that. It will now begin to see how he value himself, value things around him and all of that.
Right.
It now begin to alter behavior. So I think first, it has to be with a mental shift.
Okay.
It has to be a mental shift.
That would then break down these barriers.
Yes.
All right. So hopefully we're on track with the kinds of information that we're putting out today. I want to very quickly run through something. I see a call coming. We'll take that shortly. I want to quickly run through something. Just a quick summary of if we're going to have this mental shift. This is what we need to understand about the labels that we own, that we internalize, and that we use to determine our decision-making process. And then we will now move to the practical steps. There are 10 practical steps that you've provided. So we'll talk about that. But just to hear, just in case you didn't listen on the conversation last week, the mental shift we're talking about here is disowning the label masses, okay? There are things that happen when you see yourself as something outside of what you are legally recognized as, even within your own country. So it tends to shrink your identity when you own that term and you see yourself as the masses. You begin to see yourself as just part of a crowd, not as an individual that has influence. It also tends to make you adopt a passive mindset. What does that mean? There's a tendency to wait for leaders instead of taking initiative, right? The term, owning that term also makes you doubt that your voice matters. And so participation in governance or advocacy feels pointless. It also helps you tolerate poor leadership. Your expectations drop, making it easier to accept less than what is deserved. And that is because you have allowed this dichotomy mindset to persist. And so you see them as people that you cannot reach, you cannot talk to, you cannot influence. Again, we've said that there are barriers. We do recognize that there are barriers. But perhaps if you start with this mindset shift, as my guest has said, then it can help us break down those barriers. So yes, when you have this masses mindset, you tolerate poor leadership, you follow rather than thinking independently, you disengage from civic duties, you internalize inferiority, it makes you avoid leadership roles, and then it makes us easier to divide, us the masses, if we are going to continue with that label, just making you understand what it does to the mindset and why this shift is important. And then it limits even your own potential. And that's a very subtle effect, but very powerful. People begin to live below what they can actually become. So, taking practical steps, let's get into that. Over to you, sir.
Okay, so in taking practical steps, I believe strongly that mentorship there are certain way we must stop seeing ourselves. We must stop seeing ourselves as spectators in the politics of Nigeria, in the national life of Nigeria. We must start.
So not just the politics?
Not just the politics.
National life. What is national life?
When I'm talking about national life, you see, let me give you a practical scenario. When I go to the polling unit, for instance, let's talk about election. It's part of our national life. I must not see election as a ritual that must happen every 4 years. I must see election as my power and my authority to transfer my right to an individual to make decisions on my behalf in certain quarters of the country. If I look at my right thumb or my left thumb, whatever thumb I'm going to use to cast my vote, that's where my power lies. Either I'm transferring that right. So when I'm talking about national life, I'm talking about where our economic decisions are made.
Right.
Where our political decisions are made. Matters concerning security. Matters concerning the security. Now, the masses mindset makes us think that government is responsible absolutely for my security. But I must recognize that citizens put the responsibility on me to take care of my immediate security.
I mean, some people will say they're doing that already, but because there's no commensurate support from the government,
this is where,
again, barriers.
Yeah, let me say this. When we say government, there are people from our communities. There are people from our families. There are individual citizens of Nigeria. Government is not, when we say government, I think the mindset first is we're seeing them as people like they just come from somewhere to come and govern us, and they're going back somewhere. No. There are people that rose from among us. We have traditional rulers who must hold accountable to hold their community, the members of their community accountable. Do you understand what I'm saying? So what I'm saying is, it says in essence is that, you see, we must begin to use the instrument of power that the Constitution gives to us to begin to enforce certain decisions in this country. Let me give you a scenario.
Before you do that,
yeah,
I think this is the person that was called from earlier on, so let's take it. Hello?
Hello.
Welcome.
Well, good evening. How are you?
This is Somi, but I'm very well, thank you. What's your name?
Hi, Auntie Somi. Greeting to your guests. This is a beautiful thing we are trying to do. And for me, this is supposed to be a national program anyway. Your guests have spoken very well. But for me, I don't know how you want to shape the mind of somebody that is 15 years old. I don't know. And that's why when we are young, there is specific education. It is at the point where they started tampering with our educational curriculum, we started having this problem. In that time, you learn about your civic rights, talk about taxation, your obligation. I remember when you are young, that time in the Yoruba place, there is this something we used to recite every morning. They have to teach you about hard-working makes sense. But at a point, we are burdened for this thing. We jettison, we embed the culture of the white people. And now, 20, 30 years thereafter, we are here where we are now. Me, I don't know. This orientation will never work for people that are above. So maybe probably people like you now, let's use this forum to appeal to government that they should return us back to where we are 30 years in terms of our education curriculum. So that the culture we are talking about now, people have embedded it as soon as they enter primary one, talk about civic education. Now they introduce civic education to university or polytechnic. And you want people that is 20 years old started learning civic education, it won't work. Because at that point in time, that person is either a responsible citizen or not a responsible citizen. By the time somebody enters university, you can no longer tutor that person. But for me, we should go back to the road. Thank you and God bless you.
All right, thank you, sir. Hello?
Hello.
Welcome.
Somi and our guest. Abakar calling from Guagolad. I greet the last caller, Elder Aki. How do you inspire patriotism? How do you enforce people's rights? How do you encourage or urge your students to practice justice? So it's not by abstract pronouncement or forwarding it on 30 books. No, it is by government action, government meaningful policy that is impacting the citizenry. We see how various governments of other countries they give their citizens sense of belonging. This made their citizens to be patriotic, to be upright, to be productive. They can lay their lives for their country. Now, current adopted national item, I can witness a lot of citizens, mostly youth, are dissatisfied with current adopted national item. I was an old school. I'm satisfied with Arise or compatriot. But out of this view, those in government just overrule majority of Nigeria. It's almost a colonial, what do you call it? It's always unfortunate. Leaders to lead by example. Thank you. That is my take.
All right, thank you very much, sir. We'll take a voice note and then go back to our guests.
Good evening to your guest in the house. So, I want to ask now, what exactly is the role of National Orientation Agency in shaping some of these values, national values, ethics, as it affects both the citizens and the leadership of this country? I'm actually a big advocate for, values, national value. And I know that for we to start changing the behavioral patterns of the citizenry, I think the foundation matters. So how do we get this whole campaign of discipline, civic responsibility, right into starting from our children, from the school? Because I wouldn't know if some of these topics are being treated in schools. So how do we drive a very rigorous campaign for people to begin to see Nigeria as their own, to take ownership, to be responsible as citizens? So that's my question to the guest in the house. Yes, my name is Kayode Joshua, just speaking from Abuja. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kayode. All right, so let's get to our guests and see if we can answer those questions before we then proceed. The first caller spoke to civic education and how we've lost it. This voice note also spoke to that. And then the caller, before we heard the voice note, said it is how to make that shift relies on the government, their seriousness, their intentionality, their policy making and all of that. Let's hear your thoughts on those.
I think both callers have actually spoken well. They spoke my mind. Where do we start from? It's about engagement. Now, when curriculums are being developed by agency of government, in terms of Ministry of Education and all that, as citizens, we have the right for freedom of information by Freedom of Information Bill to put in our input and say, no, this will not work. We must begin to develop curriculums and programs, not just in schools alone, in mosques and churches, because these are opinion leaders, these are people that shape the thoughts and the minds of the people. When we transfer this responsibility alone to just schools, it will not just only help religious leaders have a role to also play. Traditional leaders have a role to also play. Political leaders also have a role to play. Particularly, we're coming towards this campaign season. Promises are going to be made. We must go beyond just the promises and begin to hold those who have made promises, ask questions.
Who now? Are you talking about the citizens?
Citizens must begin to ask questions.
Okay.
And hold leaders accountable. You come to the podium, you said you want to just gather people just to talk to them and make promise and go. Now, when we gather at the campaign rally, citizens should rise up to say, no, 4 years ago you told us you are going to do that, do this. These are the promises you make. We keep the records. What have you done? Practical terms. Not to carry speakers and just do jamboree and go. We must begin to alter some of this, the narrative, alter some of the programs that they just gather the people, come and talk at them, make promises, share money, share food, and go.
On this?
Now, I'm going somewhere with
okay.
this.
All right.
Now, to answer the questions that, the listeners ask, there are civil societies, there are NGOs, there are people who are watching, who are checkmating the government, opposition parties, and all of that. Anytime we hear that there's about to be a change in the curriculum they are altering the curriculum, most times we don't give attention to them. We ignore them.
That's concerning the educational
aspect. Most times we don't know, or we hear and we look like it doesn't concern me. When government is about to make decisions, the press have a role to let the people know that these are the changes, these are the informations we are getting in for us. Sometimes some of this information come during maybe a press briefing or a normal meeting, and somebody's doing a book presentation and make a reference to it. We only talk about them on social media, we no go agree and all of that, and it ends there. We don't take responsibility to say, this is about shaping the culture and the future of Nigeria. And this is where civil society also come in. When a policy, a curriculum is being developed that does not tally with the core values that we hold, civil society holds the government accountable on the behalf of the people. We need to voice out and say, no, as a people, this does not align with the values of behavior that is enshrined in our constitution.
In practical terms, when you say voice out, because I'm on radio every day. We see some of these headlines. We talk about it. The listeners call in. They engage. You hear their thoughts and opinions. Does that constitute voicing out, or is there more to it?
There's more to it. It's part of voicing out. After we've all done all the opinion and we've shouted, we've expressed, and the radio show ends, what happens? This is why it's important that every citizen must belong to a group of an association. We have freedom of association. We have NGOs. NGOs are non-governmental organizations who take some of these issues and begin to put them as a burning issue in our national life. Associations can begin to write to National Assembly, write to agencies of government. Do you understand? Put them on the news. Do you understand what I'm saying? And say, these conversations, these are narrative that popular opinion of Nigeria are feeling that the curriculum of the nation at different level must be altered. We write to the agency and insist that alterations must be done.
And when they don't listen?
Why would they listen? You see, one thing about government is, when we say they don't listen, it is because we know that in a while we all get tired and leave it. If you stay on one issue for too long and consistently make a demand, you get the attention. Take a scenario of one guy who will come and stand on the road with a placard every morning on the road. 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. By the end of 1 month, once it's consistent, people begin to give it attention. At the end of two months, consistency, people begin to give it attention. 3 months, news will begin to give it attention. If you stay there for 6 months, CNN will begin to give it attention. It's about consistency. We come to talk on a platform like this. When we're done with brilliant ideas, the program ends. Somebody say, thank you so much for this is the end of the show. That conversation ends there. Who takes it beyond here? So we must begin to, that's where ownership comes in. When we share opinion and we say, this is where we should go, we must begin to form conversations, narrative. We must take ownership of that decision and begin to write to the relevant agencies and begin to demand that these alterations must be made in line with the Constitution. One of our biggest challenges, sorry to say this, is the challenge of consistency, holding to an opinion to see that we see the end to it. So I agree with them. Now we must begin to, incorporate some of these things into the curriculum for these children who are coming up, and just go beyond just the mental level. Let's take it practically to the street. Take it to show how does this thing translate in real life, not just the mental knowledge. How does it practically affect our daily life? It's important we have that. Okay. Then secondly, national orientation agencies and agency of government are set up to inform, educate, and empower Nigerians with adequate information. Are they doing their job? No. Who is checking them? There is the oversight function of members of assembly. They are putting putting money for them every year. They are representatives.
Whose responsibility is it to check them? Is it the members of representatives?
Whose mandate are they holding?
Or is it our responsibility?
Whose mandate are they holding?
The mandate of the people. Well, I can't speak for them. We've heard them sing something else.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
I don't.
Who gave them the mandate? The power belongs to the people. That's what I'm talking about, citizenship engagement. We must engage our representatives who we send to represent us and demand for some of these things. Because when the executive design their budgets, which is our national treasury and resources, they are the ones that go to debate on it, allocate it to the various agencies of government to spend it on behalf of us. And if they allocate budget, they are representing us as citizens. We are all stakeholders. When every community begins to hold their members of reps, not just members of reps. I was saying something earlier off air. Remember I said to you that sitting here, Coach Isaiah, I have 4 levels of representation. I have a councillor representing my ward. What is the duty of the councillor in my ward? How is he engaging me within the immediate community I'm living? What are his responsibilities? How many Nigerians are holding their councillor accountable? When we hold the councillor accountable, he will hold the chairman accountable.
So that's the first level of representation.
It's the first level of representation, yes.
Okay.
The councillor who oversees the ward, the immediate place where I'm living. The roads are bad. Things are not going very well. Do you understand what I'm saying? The councillor have a responsibility. Then there's a chairman, you understand what I'm saying?
The local government.
Of the local government. Now, when I hold the councillor, when everybody hold they'll be able to hold their chairman. This is what our people are demanding. This is what the people are saying. The chairman will sit up. They'll vote to that. I have members of assembly, state assembly, who's representing my constituency. At the state level. At the state level. How do we engage the member of assembly? Because they have the right to impeach the governor if the governor is not performing. There must be engagement at those levels. How many of us even know them? How are we engaging them on a monthly, on a quarterly basis? Collectively as a people. Before we talk about members of House of Representatives.
At the federal level.
At the federal level.
Let's take a pause there, sir. 4 levels of representation. Think on that. We'll be back.
This is Nigeria Info.